Welcome into our postgame coverage of the Clemson win tonight over Troy, 27-16, the final. And our report is brought to you by the South Carolina Beef Council. Here a lot longer than we thought we would be, and a game that was a lot tougher than we thought it would be. Clemson, a 33-point favorite going into this one over Troy. Then we had a lengthy weather delay that put everything behind schedule after each team had a possession. In fact, Troy's first possession of the game, they go right down the field. They score a touchdown. They're up 7-0. Clemson went 3 and out. And then the weather delay, the lightning, the heavy rain. We picked things up about 5:20, and Clemson did not come out of the locker room. Troy did. Troy came out with some fire, both at the beginning of the game and then after the rain delay. And Troy continued to build their lead on the Tigers, and they took it up to 16-0 late in the first half. Clemson really, it was so bad the fans were booing. No, I mean the fans were booing. The fans were calling for a change at quarterback. Get Klubnik out. Some shouted as the Tigers came off the field after another poor offensive series. So things were not going well for Clemson. They remember now they were shut out in the second half against LSU. And for most of the first half, they were shut out by Troy. So they went a long time without scoring any points. But the game turned late in the first half with Clemson getting a field goal. They got a field goal. So they go into the locker room down 16-3, but they had some momentum there with the way they finished up getting that field goal. And then they came out of the second half, whatever Dabo Swinney and the staff had to say, it worked. And I got to believe they said, we're going to run the football. We're going to be physical. Now, keep in mind, Clemson was playing with an offensive line that had been moved around a little bit because Tristan Lee was not available. And they were moving some guys here, moving some guys there. So you had some guys playing that had not been penciled into the original starting lineup back at the beginning of the season. But no excuse there because all the guys that played except for Thurman, who's a youngster, all the other guys were veteran players. So there's no excuse there. Well, Jacobs is a freshman, and he played a good bit of tackle. But the rest of the guys are all veterans, so no excuse there. So the Tigers really struggled. They embarrassed themselves offensively in the first half. In fact, one of the scores by Troy was another mistake by Klubnik around the goal line on a pass play. Was batted at the line of scrimmage. It was picked off and returned for a 4-yard touchdown. So that was another score. The Clemson defense was, except for that opening drive, pretty much stymieing Troy as far as giving up touchdowns. They gave up a field goal. They gave up that opening touchdown, but the other touchdown came off a pass interception. Different story in the second half. Clemson came out with the proverbial hair on fire, took the opening kickoff. Second half went right down the field with Adam Randall doing most of the work. He had 59 yards rushing on that drive, 1-yard touchdown run, and that made it a 16-10 game. Then the defense picked it up. They intercepted the Troy quarterback, and that led to a 26-yard touchdown pass from Klubnik to Wesco. That made it 17-16. Tigers take the lead for the first time. Next possession, another interception by the Tigers. That led to a 30-yard field goal. So now they're up 20-16. Everything is rolling their way. They dominated the third quarter, 113 yards to 54 yards. And after getting a turnover on downs at their own 34, they moved the ball down the field to the Troy 34. And then Klubnik threw one of the best balls that he might have ever thrown. I mean, it was a beauty. It was a high-hanging kind of a lob pass. It just dropped in the bucket. It's one of those passes that just dropped in the bucket right in Wesco's hands for a beautiful touchdown pass, 34 yards. That made it 27-16. And from there, the Clemson defense pretty much shut Troy down. Troy could really get nothing going offensively in the second half. They had only 95 yards in the second half to 202 for Clemson. Randall was a horse. He got it going in the second half. 91 rushing yards in the second half, 112 yards total for him. Wesco was big. 7 catches for 118 yards. He had 2 touchdowns. Klubnik hit 10 of his last 11 passes after a so-so start. So he finished 18 of 24, 196 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have that one pick six. He had some big pass plays. He had pass plays of 25 yards, 35 yards, 26 yards, and 34 yards. The Tigers did not have a lot of big bursts in the running game. They had that 130-yard run by Randall, but that was the only rush they had of more than 12 yards. So not a lot of big plays in the running game tonight. Troy was hurt by 10 penalties, but I'll say this, 3 of those were unsportsmanlike, and you certainly don't like unsportsmanlike penalties. But in the first half, Troy played with a lot of emotion, and Clemson didn't have that emotion. Clemson did not really come out inspired. And then once the weather hit, the place wasn't filled up to begin with. And then once the weather hit, many of the fans didn't come back. So it was a crowd that resembled a spring game kind of setting from a crowd standpoint. So Clemson didn't have a whole lot of emotion. They found that at halftime and played with a lot more emotion in the second half. But my point is that Troy, you don't like unsportsmanlike penalties, but they were playing with a lot of emotion in this game, and they really thought they had a chance to win this ball game. Crowder, their quarterback, Goose Crowder, finished 19 of 31 for 223 yards. He started 7 for 7, so he finished 12 of 24. To sum it up, not good enough for Clemson. Not when you're talking about a team that's ranked number 8 and is thinking about ACC and national championships. No way. Not this team, not right now, not the way it looks. This team should not be ranked in the top 10 next week. I don't have a vote, but I don't think you should reward this kind of win with a top 10 vote. They're just not there. They're just not there yet. They might get there. They got to go to Georgia Tech next week for the ACC opener. That will indeed be a big test. But Clemson's got a lot of work to do. And if they don't find it in practice this week, if they don't get some guys healthy, they did have Walker Parks back tonight, and he was able to play. But they were without Antonio Williams. That's big. They were without Tristan Lee. That's big. They were without Khalil Barnes once again. So they need to get these guys healthy and going again. But this kind of performance tonight is just not going to cut it against really good teams. I mean, this is a Sun Belt team they played, Troy, and it's a middle-of-the-road Sun Belt team. It's not like they're the upper echelon of the Sun Belt. They could get there maybe. They had some good moments, and their running game at times was good. They moved the ball on the ground against the Tigers in the first half, but second half, again, totally different story as Clemson dominated the final 30 minutes for the most part. And they won this game, but they did not cover because they came in as a 33-point favorite. So for some, that's disappointing. But it's a win. The Tigers are on the board with their first win of the season. Now they'll get ready for Georgia Tech next week in Atlanta. Always a tough game when they go to the ATL. So Dabo Swinney will meet via conference call tomorrow with the media. We'll have that covered for you on our website, sportstalksc.com. For now, the final score here at Death Valley, Clemson 27, Troy 16. Sports Talk at the stadium on this Saturday night, brought to you by the South Carolina Beef Council.